Snow had started falling continuously since early afternoon, covering the world in white, inside a humble little house, while the wind howled through the little mountain town, blowing against rooftops and shattering window glass. As she stirred a pot of soup, 22-year-old waitress Emma Carter glanced at the clock. She had been watching her younger brother Noah, who was 5 years old, play in the yard. Noah had boundless energy as he ran around with his toy truck and made small snowmen. Today, Emma was so preoccupied with housework and work that she had lost track of time, until a strong gust of wind shook the door and let him play outdoors for much too long. A towel was used to clean Emma's hands as she scowled and made her way to the window. Noah's laughing had just filled the yard, but now it was silent. In a panic, she hurried to the door and flung it open, her voice trembling. In a state of mounting terror, Noah beckoned to his beloved inside, but the wind whisked her words away, consuming them before they could go very far. The snowfall had intensified, and the sky had become a drab shade of gray. Stepping out onto the porch, Emma could see her breath in the frigid air as she cried out to Noah once again, this time with more volume. Still, there was no response, and a shiver went down her spine that was unrelated to the temperature. She looked all around the yard, hoping to find her brother anywhere. His little footprints headed away from the house, vanishing into the whirling snow. She began to feel her heart race as she reassured herself that he was merely playing a game, but in reality, her fears were starting to take hold. Meanwhile, Noah stumbled through the snow, his tiny boots sinking with every step. The cold made his cheeks flush, and his tiny hands, despite wearing mittens, were starting to grow numb. The wind was so loud it sounded like a monster's growl, and he twisted and turned in circles, his eyes hurting from the icy flakes that were falling on his face. "Hi, Emma." Despite his trembling voice, he pleaded with Emma. "Where are you?" But no one responded. Instead, the wind became stronger, obliterating his cries. As he began to feel his power dwindle due to the cold, he began to panic and his breathing became shallower. Suddenly, his foot slipped on something under the snow, sending him tumbling forward. Slamming his face down against the ice ground, he struggled to get back up, but the cold was now getting to his bones, slowing down his movements. The snowfall showed no mercy as it howled through the woods, bending branches under its weight and spinning in all directions. Noah, who was genuinely scared, curled up into a ball, his small body trembling furiously, and all he could do was wait. Drenching winds of fury unable to stop his trembling, Noah lay curled up in the thick frost blanket that blanketed the ground. His breath came out in short, frantic gasps, little puffs despite wearing mittens. His small fingers were devoid of sensation as he dipped them into the icy air. The wind prickled his face, causing it to sting. His entire body yearned for warmth, but it was nowhere to be found. "Hi, Emma," he whimpered, but his voice was barely a whisper now. He tried to sit up to move, but his limbs felt heavy, stiff, as if the cold was wrapping around him like chains, pulling him deeper into exhaustion. Deer pricked his eyes, but they froze almost instantly on his lashes. He was scared, more scared than he had ever been in his whole life. Somewhere deep in his 5-year-old mind, he knew he had made a mistake. He shouldn't have wandered so far from home. He should have stayed where Emma could find him. But now everything looked the same, just endless white stretching in all directions. The swirling snow erased all traces of where he had come from, leaving him lost in an unfamiliar frozen world. His breathing slowed as exhaustion weighed down on him. His tiny body, unable to fight the relentless cold, began to reel. Noah was so exhausted that he drooped his eyelids, as if to close them for a moment. Suddenly, a low, faraway sound pierced through the chaos of the storm. I imagined a bark that was louder than the crunch of snow, and Noah's thick lashes fluttered open ever so little. Noah wished he could turn his head to investigate, but his body was stubborn and wouldn't budge. Before the darkness overtook him, his final sight was of a massive, ominous figure arising from the tempest. In the midst of a whirlwind of brown and black fur, he felt a heavy, constant weight pushing down on him. As the storm engulfed him, Noah realized he was no longer alone, but he lacked the energy to do anything about it. The storm persisted in its relentless assault, howling through the trees and covering everything in an unforgiving blanket of snow. Amidst the blizzard, a large German shepherd moved purposefully, his coat dusted with snow. Even though Rex retired from search and rescue a year ago, his instincts to protect those in danger never went away. Now, as he trudged through the deep snow, his senses alerted him to something amiss. A faint but distinct scent indicated a child. Rex's powerful legs effortlessly cut through the drifts, and he accelerated. Suddenly, he saw a small figure curled into a tight ball, barely visible against the snow. Rex let out a bark, but the child remained motionless. His heart raced. He had witnessed people succumb to hypothermia in the past. He gently nudged the child's shoulder, knowing that if he didn't receive warmth soon, he wouldn't survive. Rex pressed his warm body against the child, wrapping around him as much as he could. He could feel the boy's shallow breathing, his frail frame shivering uncontrollably. The dog whined softly, licking the child's frozen cheek, urging him to wake up, but Noah barely stirred. Rex let out another deep, urgent bark, this time not for the boy but for anyone to hear. The wind swallowed the sound almost instantly. Rex's ears flicked back, his mind working quickly. He could try to leave to run for help, but that would mean abandoning the child to the cold even for a short time, and he didn't know how much longer the boy could last. For the first time in his life, Rex hesitated. His training told him to find help, but his instincts, his heart, told him to stay. Rex let out a deep sigh, then made his decision. The night seemed to go on forever. With the wind howling through the trees, rattling branches and sending sheets of ice hurtling through the air. The snow kept falling, gradually engulfing Rex and Noah under its frigid weight. But Noah wouldn't face the storm alone if Rex was by his side. Rex huddled closer to the child, doing his best to shield him from the relentless wind. His thick coat had shielded him from harsh weather in the past, but this storm was unlike anything he had encountered in his years of rescue work. With each gust, a chill ran down his spine, cutting deep into his muscles. His paws, which had once been powerful and sure, were beginning to lose their edge. Exhaustion was setting in, but he refused to give in. A brief moment of comfort swept over Rex when Noah shifted ever so slightly beneath him, his small fingers twitching. However, the relief was fleeting. The boy's breathing had become too shallow, and his trembling had subsided, albeit not to the same degree as before. This boded poorly. As Rex licked Noah's chilly cheek, he emitted a gentle whimper. "Oh, please, youngster, remain by my side, Noah." Unresponsive, the dog shifted his body to be even closer to the boy, attempting to radiate what little heat he had left. Rex, despite his own trembling, would not allow the boy to succumb to the cold. Every so then, he would raise his head and bark in brief, urgent bursts that barely reached. Despite the howling wind and the fact that his voice was becoming hoarse, he continued speaking. Someone had to listen, and someone had to look, but the night continued speaking without responding. No matter how much his muscles begged for rest or how heavy his eyelids felt, Rex would not sleep. His job was far from done. Instead, he fixated on the steady rise and fall of Noah's small chest, listening to the boy's weak but present heartbeat. Rex would not give up no matter how bad the storm or how cold it got. He would fight until the first light of dawn broke through the storm. The wind had finally started to slow down, leaving behind a frozen silence world as it cast a faint glow over the snow-covered countryside. Amidst the silence, a frantic voice broke through. A son of Noah. Emma's voice reeked of exhaustion from calling out all night, her legs aching from trudging through the deep snow. Despite her pain, she persisted in her search for the missing boy. Just a few hours ago, a group of concerned citizens, including neighbors, volunteers, and off-duty rescue workers, had banded together to aid in the search. The storm had rendered the search nearly impossible, but now that the weather had subsided, a glimmer of hope had returned. Suddenly, a man up ahead yelled out, and Emma's breath caught as she stumbled toward the sound. Traces of deep, strong paw prints led away from the main road and into the trees. Next, smaller, uneven footprints trailed off before vanishing into the snow. A dog had been accompanying Noah. Following the route, Emma's pulse raced despite the diminishing chill. Suddenly, she spotted a snow pile with two individuals on top of it. While she hurried closer, her breath seized, and she saw a big German shepherd wrapped up around her younger brother, Noah. She knelt down and quickly brushed the snow off his pale face and blue lips, but he was still alive. She held Noah tight, her voice quivering with emotion, and said, "I'm here, you're safe." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she held him. With his words scarcely audible above a whisper, Noah trembled, his little fists firmly gripping her coat. While he was still alive at their side, Emma's voice broke into a sob. Rex emitted a low, weary whine cry. Despite his lifeless form and icy fur, his intense gaze never left Noah. Turning to the dog, Emma realized Rex remained motionless, but the answer was staring back at him from his exhausted eyes. He had made a choice, and that choice had saved Noah. Dawning, her voice cracked from the overwhelming wave of emotions, relief, gratitude, and something deeper that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Her fingers trembled as she tentatively reached out to touch the dog's frozen fur. With a quivering hand, Emma delicately touched the dog's cold hair, expressing her gratitude. In a whisper, she muttered, "Thank you for saving my brother." Finally able to breathe, Emma's dread subsided, but she still needed to get Noah to a hospital as soon as possible. Emma barely registered the source of the shout, but all she could think about was clinging to Noah, feeling his little chest rise and fall against hers. She hopped into the back of a rescue vehicle, with Rex following closely behind. As the truck rumbled forward, Emma reached down and placed a hand on the dog's head, whispering, "Stay with us, okay?" Rex let out a low-volume whine, as if to assure her that he would. The hospital room was warm, with the gentle hum of machines and the occasional murmur of nurses passing by. Noah lay under a thick blanket, his small hands gripping the edges. He drifted in and out of sleep, his body still weak from the cold, but he was finally alive, safe. Rex, the dog who had saved Noah's life, lay curled up at the foot of the bed, his ears twitching occasionally as he dozed. The hospital staff had allowed him to stay after hearing what he had done. He was stiff and exhausted, but he refused to leave Noah's side. Emma sat next to him, holding his hand, unwilling to let go. She had barely slept since they found him. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the snow, the storm, the terrifying emptiness where her little brother had been. And every time she saw him, the dog who had saved Noah's life. Noah, who was barely conscious, reached out and gently touched the dog's thick fur. Emma felt a tightness in her chest as she observed Noah's unusual demeanor. Noah had always been an introverted, shy child, and after the loss of his parents, he had grown even more reserved. However, with Rex, everything changed. Despite everything, Noah appeared calm and secure, as if he knew that this dog would always be there to protect him. A tall, broad-shouldered guy with worn but compassionate eyes stood in the doorway, interrupting Emma's train of thinking. Harper. Liam. He was the owner of Rex, and Emma knew him at a glance. He had been a fixture in town for years, always kind and willing to provide a hand. Although Emma understood Liam's motivation for being here and acknowledged that Rex rightfully belonged to him, the prospect of relinquishing Rex caused an unexpected tightening of her chest. Liam stepped forward slowly, looking at the dog at the foot of the bed before returning his gaze to Emma. His expression softened as he noticed how close they had grown. "I heard what happened," he whispered, "wanting to check on your brother and your friend Rex." Emma swallowed, unsure of what to say. She worried that he would take Rex away from Noah, cutting him off from the one friend who had saved him. She also wondered why the thought of losing Rex hurt her. As Emma watched Liam, her pulse raced, trying to decipher if he was here to abduct Rex from her sight. Emma swallowed hard as she glanced at Rex, the dog who had risked his life for her brother, who had stayed when no one else could, and who had become a part of their world in the span of a single night. How could she let him go before she could find the words to say it? Liam's voice roused Noah, who was still half asleep. Rex remained firmly grasped in his small hand, his grip weak but determined. Rex mumbled as if sensing the unspoken conversation. Liam let out a small breath and rubbed the back of his neck. His gaze softened as he looked at the boy, as if he had grown attached. Rex appeared to have become a part of their world. Before Emma's stomach turned in pain, Liam spoke out. "I never imagined I'd lose him this badly. Now Hune is going to win him back." Liam sighed and smiled a little unevenly, "But I believe he's precisely where he should be." As Emma blinked, Liam glanced across at Rex and chuckled. "I've had Rex for a long time, and he's always been a guardian. He picks and selects where he's needed most, and it seems like he's picked Noah." As if a knot were untangling in her chest, Emma sensed that he was allowing them to hold on to him. Her voice hardly rose above a whisper as she gazed at Rex, who was still snuggled protectively behind her brother. Tears welled up in her eyes. There was an unsaid but powerful agreement between them, and Liam replied, "Yeah, I am." Perhaps there was more than that. As the months went by, Rex transformed into much more than Noah's guardian. He became his best friend, his guardian angel, and the link that connected them to the outside world. With the help of his newfound confidence, Noah smiled more, opened out, and made friends. With Rex sitting proudly between them, Emma also found herself smiling more. And Liam, well, he never really left. One day he didn't even need to. No longer were Emma and Liam two individuals, but a family. A family that had been separated but had now found its way back home.